The subway game. I don't want to tell the story. I don't want to tell it because I know no matter how much I warn people, somebody is bound to try it. I'm telling the story as a cautionary tale. If anyone ever finds instructions on how to play the subway game, pretend you never saw it. I can't state this enough. It all started on a summer afternoon. I was over at a friend's house, we'll call him Tim. This was around the early 2010s and me and Tim were browsing random forums. It was a summer and we were both 15 at the time. We had just come home from the pool, so we were cooling off in Tim's room. Anyway, after a few hours of searching through the web, we eventually found a post about something called the subway game. It was a really strange post. It had no upvotes or downvotes, it only had 3 total views, it had been posted the day prior. The title was just the subway game, and description, DM me for the rules. Me and Tim were bored, so we ended up DMing the poster. The response was nearly instant. Tim and I looked at each other and I began reading what the poster had DM'd us out loud. How to play the subway game. Step 1. Play between the hours of 2 and 4 AM. Step 2. Board the subway and make sure you're alone. Step 3. Once the car makes it to the second to last stop, close your eyes and hold your breath for 60 seconds. Step 4. Open your eyes once you hear the bell. Step 5. Good luck. Tim and I instantly began to laugh. We were both online constantly and had seen a bunch of creepypastas similar to this. We closed his computer later that day and I went home completely forgetting about the subway game. But later that night, something strange happened. I booted up my computer again because I couldn't fall asleep. I saw that I had a new notification on Reddit. I clicked it and saw that the poster had messaged me the rules of the subway game too. I chuckled nervously to myself, figuring that maybe I had just logged into Tim's account by accident. We were good friends and knew each other's passwords, so it wasn't impossible. It was late at night, so maybe I just did it without realizing. I clicked my account and my eyes widened. It was my own private account. I could feel the palms of my hands getting moist. You know that feeling you sometimes get when you're alone in the dark too long? The feeling that you're being watched. That's the feeling I got. I tried to reason with myself. It's probably just Tim on another account messing with me. I began to catch my breath. I went over to turn my lights on. Even though I thought it was Tim, a part of me was still pretty spooked. I clicked the account that sent me the link, figuring that would give Tim away. But no, the account had the same username, and the only post it had ever made was yesterday. My blood ran cold. How could this person know I was standing next to Tim when we saw the rules? I shook my head, I quickly got ready for bed and went to sleep trying to forget about it. But the knowledge of the message lingered the next morning. When I saw Tim the next day, he looked pretty shook. Something to know about my friend Tim is that he was never really good at continuing a joke for long, nor was he a very good actor. So when he came to me with wide eyes and began explaining how his other accounts got similar messages about the subway game, I believed him. I told him I also got messages. The air between us suddenly turned cold. I could see the fear in his eyes, and they were reflective of my feelings as well. Whoever made the post somehow knew we had both seen it. As the days went by, the subway game was all we could talk about. I didn't want to play it, but I couldn't get the damn thing out of my head, even after the messages stopped coming to my various accounts. It got so bad that I couldn't even sleep some nights. I needed some closure. It was around 2 weeks after our initial viewing of the post that I called Tim up in the night and asked him if he wanted to go down to the subway. I know it was stupid looking back, but I was tired of this post controlling my life, and I could tell Tim felt the same way. The messages to my account bothered me, sure, but what bothered me more was how specific the instructions were to play. I can't explain it, but they didn't feel fake. That's really what bothered me. It got to the point where I couldn't focus in class thinking about it. I had to get this game out of my head. While my parents were asleep, I snuck out of my room through my window and walked down to the subway station. The night was cold and eerie. While I was walking, the same feeling of being watched overcame me. Tim lives a block over from me, so we met up at the same station. It was around 2:26 AM when we arrived. We both had the same look in our eye, 2 kids determined to end the control the game had on our minds. I live in a pretty big city, so it was going to take a while before the second to last stop. It was dark in the station, a darkness you can almost feel, like the humidity of the summer air. Tim and I sat in silence. We were the only ones there. All we had brought were flashlights, one for each of us. It took 10 minutes for the next train to come. Me and Tim boarded. Nobody was on board. This was a little strange even for the late hour, but me and Tim didn't think much of it. We were more focused on when we would arrive to Tucker Station, the second to last station before the train reached its final stop. Tim and I both knew nothing would happen. We hoped nothing would happen. To us, playing the game was not a way to encounter something strange or even some test of bravery. It was just to get the idea out of our heads that the game was anything more than an urban legend. The third to last station came and went. It was now 3:12. We were on our way to the second to last station. The ride to the final station felt like an eternity. I was sitting down with my hands on my knees. My palms were sweating and I felt my heart beating out of my chest. The entire time, not a soul had boarded the train. After what felt like a lifetime, the train finally came to a halt, moving us back and forth in one swift motion. Me and Tim looked at each other. I closed my eyes and held my breath. I began counting in my head, looking out into the infinite void of my closed eyes. 30 seconds went by, then 45, then 55. I was almost out of air. 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. I heard nothing. I was relieved. I was about to open my eyes when I heard it. It was the distinct sound of a bell ringing. I don't know how to describe it. It sounded like a church bell being played through a cheap speaker. But for some reason I seemed to have felt the vibration throughout my body as if it was right next to me. I opened my eyes and quickly exhaled, but the air felt thick. I looked next to me to find that Tim wasn't there. I started yelling his name.
Tim? Where are you?
I was still in the train. After calling Tim's name for a few minutes, I sat down. I began to think about the rules again, and that's when it hit me. Rule 1. Play alone. We had broken the first rule of the game by playing together. As soon as I made this realization, the door opened. The outside was pitch black, the kind of darkness that's liquid and all-encompassing, threatening to spill into the well-lit train. I began to walk apprehensively towards the open door. I pointed my flashlight into the darkness from the safety of the train. I found myself inside of another station. It wasn't Fieldview Station, which is the last one where I live. It looked different. I took a nervous step into the darkness, until eventually my entire body was submerged in it. It was so dark I could almost feel it on my skin. The only two sources of light was my flashlight and the open door of the train behind me. I yelled into the darkness again.
Damn!
And I was met with a deafening silence. I pointed my flashlight around the station, trying to make sense of where I was, until the light found itself illuminating a sign hanging from the roof. It unsettled me to my core. It seemed to attempt to read Fieldview Station, but it looked like it was written without knowledge of what those letters meant. They looked more like lines and curves loosely mimicking the shape of the words Fieldview Station. I don't even know how to describe it. I turned around and that's when I noticed the environment. The train car looked normal enough, but the texture on the walls almost looked drawn on. The typical grooves and bumps you would feel on the walls of a subway weren't there. It was replaced by an unsettlingly perfect flatness. The feeling of the floor also changed. Walking on felt like walking on an underinflated bounce house. My feet made permanent grooves in the floor with each step, as if I'd sink if I didn't keep moving. I continued further in because the ground I was standing on didn't give me a choice. I found in the darkness a set of stairs that seemed to lead up into the outside world. I ran over to them. The stairs had the same quality as the floor and walls. I felt zero resistance running up them. I almost slipped a few times. It was as if they lacked friction. When I finally made it to the top, the outside world was still dark. Not as dark as the station, more like the darkness of a moonless night. Despite the sky being black, there weren't any stars in the sky. I tried to yell for Tim again. I didn't expect an answer this time, and I didn't get one. The pavement didn't suck me in when I stepped on it. Instead, it felt almost soft, like a carpeted floor. I looked around. I was in the area I should have been had I left Fieldview Station. The buildings were all the same. The streetlights still shone, and the roads were still made of tarmac. I began walking towards the direction of my house, but I was in the inner city now, and I knew it would take forever. But for some reason, I just couldn't bring myself to go back into that subway. All around me, things looked nearly normal, but there were some slight changes. The cars parked on the side of the road seemed more sleek and refined than I was used to. While walking, I saw a few billboards by brands that I knew, but they were for products I had never heard of. The thing that really bothered me though was the fact that I couldn't hear any sounds. I could hear my own voice and my footsteps, but anything external to myself didn't make noise. The street light didn't buzz. There weren't any people. There weren't even any bugs. Something that really threw me off was the massive skyscraper that wasn't there before. It was tall, taller than any of the surrounding buildings. It was covered in windows and had a very pointy top. It looked similar to the Burj Khalifa, if you know what that is. Only, it seemed to be even taller. I kept walking towards my house. Something that I hadn't noticed up to that point was the complete lack of people. It was late at night, so that seemed normal, but I didn't feel any presence of any humans either. I don't know how to explain it, but there wasn't a single light in the building. Nobody on the streets. For whatever reason, the cars didn't feel like they had owners. It felt like they were almost decorations. It was the strangest feeling I've ever had. I continued in the direction of my house. I think it took hours, but I couldn't tell because it didn't feel like time passed there. Looking back on the journey to my house, it felt like it could have been 5 minutes or 10 years. I had no idea. I eventually made it to my neighborhood, but the houses looked different, like they had been renovated. I turned the corner onto the street I lived on and my blood ran cold. I looked out onto my street and it wasn't there. But that wasn't the terrifying part. The framework for a street that looked like mine was there. Except there was no texture on the road. It was just a flat gray. The grass was the same. Instead of an individual blade of grass, it was just green. It's like if you turned your graphics quality really low in a video game. Only it cut off perfectly from the more detailed stuff. That's when I saw it. The street looked like it was slowly being detailed by it. It was a figure that looked vaguely humanoid. It had long, thin limbs. Its torso was short and wide, but its neck and, weirdly, its head was long and sickly. I couldn't see any details from where I stood, but it looked at least 8 feet tall, or maybe it was 20 feet. It was hard to tell because its height looked like it was constantly changing. Sometimes it would be the size of a quarter, sometimes it was the size of a skyscraper, but somehow I couldn't tell. This being seemed beyond my comprehension, like it was made of a different kind of matter than I was. It was both the size of a grain of sand and the size of the universe simultaneously. It seemed to be filling in the details of the empty street, until after about 45 seconds, the street looked normal again. I stepped forward towards it, and that's when it happened. My footstep was loud and I could tell whatever that thing was heard it. It turned to me. It looked at me with a million eyes. I felt it stare from all around my body, as if it was behind me, in front of me, above me, before me, after me, in all sorts of other dimensions I couldn't even comprehend. I wanted to run, but I felt like it was pointless, as though my sprinting would be like trying to outrun logic itself. It pointed what looked like a finger at me, and said something that sounded like the words, "Time does not pass." The creature communicated in a billion voices. To me, it felt as though it didn't say the words, but instead made the sound. I could hear what it said in every conceivable language, through every sense. I could see what it said, I could hear what it said, I could smell and taste and feel what it said through my body. It was like hearing the words from God itself. I backed away and somehow ended up back in the subway station on my third step. I didn't even realize it happened, I was just back. The creature was gone and so was my neighborhood. The floor had the same bounce house consistency. It was still dark. The train car opened, without a sound, and a bright white light flooded the darkness. I ran towards it and practically threw myself into the car. The doors closed. I got up and caught my breath. The train began to move in a direction that wasn't forward or backwards, up or down. It didn't move in the dimensions we're used to. I closed my eyes. My body felt like it had disappeared, like I wasn't one, but many, as though I was scattered around the universe itself. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my room, laying down on my carpeted floor. It was daytime now. I looked outside my window and everything looked normal. The houses were the same they had always been. My neighbor was walking his dog, and the sun was shining. I got up and caught my breath. I figured it was just a bad dream, a realistic dream, but a dream nonetheless. I walked downstairs and greeted my mom, who was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I sat down, reflecting on the dream I had. I asked my mom if I could go to Tim's house later that day. I wanted to tell him all about the dream.
"Who's Tim?"
My mom responded. I froze. I got up from the table.
My friend Tim, you know him. You're best friends with his mom, Sabrina.
My mom looked at me confused.
"Sabrina doesn't have any kids, honey."
My body felt like it had stopped functioning in that moment. The shock was too severe. With wide eyes, I remembered how to walk and used that knowledge to make my way to the bathroom. I opened my phone to call Tim, but his phone number was nowhere to be found. I ran upstairs and looked for him online and saw no trace of him on any of the games we played together. Even the Minecraft server we both played on didn't have any of his builds on it. It was like he was completely written out of the timeline. Tim never existed. As the years went by, I started noticing more and more things about the world the subway game brought me to, becoming real. A few years ago, a brand new futuristic skyscraper was announced in my city that looked identical to the one I saw in that other world. The products on the billboards I didn't know about were being announced every few years. Just recently, it was announced that the neighborhood my children's home is in would be renovated. The projected design looked identical to the one that creature was creating. I've come to terms with the fact that my friend never existed. I blame myself somewhat because I'm the one who asked him to come with me, forgetting the rule that you had to play alone. I've never told anyone because obviously I would sound crazy, but I promise you, this really happened. I don't know who made that post or where in time and space I ended up on that fateful night. The only thing I know for sure is that the creature was right. Time does not pass. It's created.